Explorers ramped up pitch on Jamaica's oil prospects. The UK company exploring for oil offshore in Jamaica has now put a $70 billion estimate on the value of petroleum reserves, lightly laying under Jamaica's waters, waiting to be tapped. If those numbers are to be proven through further exploration and studies, the reserves would be comparable to the finds of Guyana. United Oil and Gas plc said in the latest pitch to prospective investors. The company, which has office in Dublin, London, holds a license from the Jamaican government to explore for oil in the Walton Moran block. Walton Moran's monetization potential is directly comparable to the government of nearly 11 billion barrels. This is the reserve in Guyana. United Oil said in an investor presentation last week that Jamaican High Commission in London. The presentation was released Friday, May 24th. United Oil made its presentation to investors. United Oil started hunting for oil in 2020 offshore Jamaica in a zone stretching south of Walton Basin in Westmoreland to Moran Point in St. Thomas and spanning 22,400 kilometers. United Oil is seeking a co-investor to drill test the block. It's already received 2 extensions from the Jamaican government to drill or drop the license. United Oil sees a huge upside potential beyond 7.0 billion barrels. Its extensive consultants, Energy Advisory Limited, puts the estimate as high as 15 billion barrels. Walton Moran has favorable fiscal term designed to attract investors, with supportive government policy resulting in an extensive economical potential up to $70 billion. The break-even point for Guyana is $25 to $35 a barrel, compared to Jamaica's $25 a barrel. Comparatively, oil is being sold around $80 per barrel on the world market, creating room for oil producers to profit. Jamaica spends heavily on energy import, costing over $2 billion in each past 2 years. However, different dynamics including market price volatility and energy policy adjustments has pulled down the country's spend on crude oil imports over time. For example, nearly a decade ago, the Petroljam oil refinery reported that it spent $1.4 billion on oil imports for fiscal year of 2025. The following year, the import bill dropped to $759 million for the same volume of crude oil to the market due to the market volatility and other factors. In the more recent time, the country spent on crude oil has flirted with the past performance, but has also largely fallen relative to those days. In the past 3 years, Jamaica's crude oil import was just shy of 589 million in 2021, rose to 740 million in 2022, but fell back to 487 million in 2023. Some of the decline is related to the reduction dependence on heavy fuel oil to reduce electricity and rise LNG and renewable as alternatives. United Oil's comparison of Jamaica with Guyana was a key focus in the UK-based company's latest investor presentation, which was then touted at 23 billion. Oil discovery in recent years resulted in Guyana becoming the fastest-growing economy in the world. Half of Guyana oil revenue goes to the government. In Jamaica, proven reserves would result in a 42% of oil revenue flowing to the Jamaican government, based on United Oil presentation documents. It puts the arrangement at the lower end of such agreements. Peru sits at the bottom with 41%, while Angola sits at the top with 90% of its revenue flowing to that government. The size of the take generally relates to the government's direct participation in the oil venture. Jamaica operates a very favorable producing sharing agreement. There is a statement from United Oil, and I quote, "Jamaica operates a very favorable production sharing agreement regime with no state participation." Why will Jamaica only profit at 42% for their oil revenues? Well, it's because of their lack of participation in this company's discovery of this oil. The more Jamaica is willing to participate in the discovery of this oil, they can then negotiate for a higher revenue percentage. However, the less participation one country has is usually the less negotiating power they have. This is usually how these things work. When you look at it from Peru and Angola, The differences is quite huge. In Angola, it's 90%, which suggests that the Angola government must be heavily included in the oil extraction and the oil discovery processes. In Angola's case, the oil might actually be available underneath land instead of water. Oil that's available underneath land is usually a little bit more easy to locate and allocate and to extract to get proven results, while oil underwater is a far more difficult feat. In fact, it depends on how much oil reserves there is. If the oil reserve is between 5 to 10 billion, no company is willing to make that investment because the profits long term will be too small. While 70 billion in value is significantly different, that's a lot of money on a year-to-year basis. That oil reserve is possible to last for decades, for Jamaica of course, and to whomever they choose to export to. So Jamaica is sitting on the sideline, having been burnt in the past over its participation in exploration activities. Over time, Jamaica is engaged in several oil discoveries and drill, resulting in at least 11 confirmed oil and gas seeps. But commercial finds have eluded the country. In 1980s, through the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, a state agency that was folded into the Ministry of Energies a few years ago. The government had set up 3 onshore wells at Windsor, Retrieve and Hertford, which are now largely forgotten. Windsor in St. Anne's holds significance as the first documented location of oil seep back in 1865. The current risk taker is United Oil, which is why they present their well classified, which is why they have to make a great presentation to future and prospective investors. These investors are all in it together to invest in this possible discovery of oil in Jamaica, in an agreement that the government will take 42%. Now, in a project like this, Jamaica should be one of the main investors in a project like this. The chances of there being oil in that region in Jamaica is a high probability. However, the chances of there being over 100 or 150 billion US dollars worth of oil is unlikely. What's more likely is for there to be anywhere from 50 billion up until 80 billion in terms of valuation. The results are so far looking very promising, of course. They started discovering in 2020 and they've since continued. No signs of slowing down, which says a lot. When companies are looking for oil in the same region, they will usually find oil eventually. So this is the sort of project that Jamaica should be the first and perhaps one of the most prominent investors in their own oil offshore reserves. Now, the risk taker is of course United Oil. They're in need of drilling partners to spread the risk of drilling. It has a 1 in 5 chance of making a viable oil find, but it hasn't yet convinced any investors to partner with it. So this is the global consensus that there seems to be a low chance of actually finding oil in that region. The problem isn't finding just oil, it's finding the right amount of oil after all. But with so many investment options out there, it seems as if they're struggling to find investors who are willing to aid them in drilling. Because once again, investors work on the highest probability, but there being a low probability as a general public perception, this does not mean that there is a lack of oil. It simply means that it can be more difficult to find. And who knows, as these surveys and discoveries and exploration continues, who knows what else we will unveil about these oil reserves. Where are they exactly? Are they still within Jamaica's shorelines, or are they outside of Jamaica's territory? It would be unfortunate if there were oil discoveries outside of Jamaica's territory. It would be unfortunate for Jamaica, but it could be fortunate for another state. Now, this is a look at United Oil and Gas, and this is a look at the Walton Morant License. These are the outlined areas in white that they're currently looking for oil reserves. These are the areas they're allowed to look for oil reserves. These are some additional information on what exactly they're expecting to find. 7 billion in barrel on risk means mild case on risk prospective resource. Number of prospects and leads, 21. Those are prospective resource and size. 3D seismic data, 2,250 square kilometers. So as you can see, this discovery is quite extensive. They have a lot of areas to cover. You can imagine something like this, a survey, a project like this, could go on for many years. So the possibilities that the oil is there is almost for certain. It is just finding it and finding the right amount of oil. So the areas that are in yellow are additional leads. These are areas that perhaps need additional survey and research. The areas in orange are the prospect leads. Those are the areas with the strongest results, such as the Thunderball, and on the left-hand side, Calibri. There are additional information on their PDF, amongst more additional key information that some people might find quite fascinating. This brings you into more deeper details to understand what's really going on. And these are the kind of informations that they will have provided to potential investors. Investors want as much data as possible. This is their best option to invest based upon. Data is very important. In order to have data, one must do some or at least a little of exploration. These are some additional PDFs to explain even further. The very interesting thing is that almost every country has some form of oil. But the question is, sometimes it's too deep. Every country has gold. Every country has gold, but it's sometimes too deep to reach. You know, gold mines are very fascinating things because they get so deep sometimes it is just too hot for the drilling materials to even stay in a good condition. There's always gold, there's always oil, but the difficulty is finding it. The difficulty is reaching. It is never so easy to reach. This is the type of survey that they would like to carry out. Large, major ships, built specifically for drilling, built specifically for surveying. One can imagine this would lead to great economical uptrend for Jamaica. But I believe this is where we'll end the video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to see more. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you in our next video.